Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the session today. As we just got the introduction, the topic is not what is on the slide right now. We will be talking about the evolution of open innovation and startup ecosystems after the pandemic. And we have two very special guests here with us today. If you could quickly introduce yourselves and what you do.
Wonderful. My name is Saeed Amidi, and I am the CEO and the founder of Plug and Play. Perhaps Plug and Play is the world's largest innovation platform where we help startups by connecting them to funding and large corporations.
Thank you, Saeed. And François as well.
Uh, Hello everyone, so I'm François Bitouzet. I am the managing director of Viva. Viva is the biggest event in tech, digital and startups in Europe. And basically we are dedicated to foster open innovation. So this is why I'm so happy to be here with you today to discuss this topic.
Thank you. So before we begin, I think we have 45 minutes, and I have a lot of questions I do want to ask you too. But before we get started, I think it would be great for the audience to understand in detail what you guys exactly do in your organizations. And I have a couple of slides for each of you. So if you could maybe start with Viva, if you could briefly tell us, what you do, how you foster the startup ecosystem globally, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about Viva. So we are an event based in Paris. It's a 4-day event every year. And as I said, what we want to bring all the ecosystem about open innovation together. So on the one hand, we have the startups. On the other hand, we have all the people who can want to share the innovation. So for instance, big companies. So we bring everybody together. It's something like almost 100,000 people every year. And we try to make new connection because we believe that the power of an event like this one, is to create new connection. So for that, we work with conferences. We want to have a key speaker coming from all over the world. We have people like Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook, Jack Ma, President Macron, etc. So this is the first step of Viva conferences. We work a lot on creating business opportunities. We want people, when they come back from Viva, we want to have them to have contract, to have good opportunities with investors, with clients, with the ecosystem. And the third level of what we propose is we try to showcase innovation as much as possible, especially the innovation coming from the startups. So we have an amazing number of media coming from all over the world. And so all of this, it leads us to become only in 6 years. We have become the biggest event in Europe. So maybe you can have the next slide. Just a few numbers, but I don't want to bother you with this. 91,000 people in 2022. 75% of the attendees are C-level, so it's a very, very interesting attendance for the startup to meet. 200 startups, 1,700 investors. So you can imagine all the things that can be done. And only one last word about Viva. Last year, 50% of the startups who joined Viva, they managed to get up to 25% of their annual leads. So it's very powerful, it's very interesting, and we think that as we believe in open innovation, we do even more every year to bring all these people together. And so I hope I will see you in June in Paris for next edition of Viva.
Thank you. When is it being held again?
From the 14th of June to the 17th of June.
And can we still register for
Yes,
this?
yes. You're welcome. Come to see me after, and I will give you some pass to go.
All right, thank you so much, François. Next, Saeed, if you could tell us a little bit about Plug and Play, that'd be great.
If I can describe Plug and Play, we know that Silicon Valley is the home for 6 or 7 top startups out of the 10 in the world. If you take LinkedIn, Google, Twitter, to just name a few, or Dropbox or Lending Club that I have been involved with. And we say, why is Silicon Valley, which is a 30, 40 mile radius, including Berkeley, Stanford, Santa Clara University, produces 6 or 7 top disruptors in the world like Airbnb and Uber. I believe it's the culture of being open innovation and open minded. And it's the culture that people are willing to invest in startups, to meet startups, and help them grow. Just last week, we had an event for Deutsche Bank Wealth Management, and one of the legend, John Chambers from Cisco, he was our guest speaker, and he was mentoring a startup that was less than 20 people. And he also put in $20 million in that startup. And we feel that the culture and that, being open-minded and working together happens in Silicon Valley. And we at Plug and Play want to mimic that here in Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto. And we create the ecosystem between the startups. We can go to the next slide. Startups, entrepreneurs, and cooperation. And we consider ourselves the leading platform in the world for open innovation. Can you go to the next one? Just to give you similar to Viva Tech, which I must admit is one of the best shows ever. I've been there twice, once early on and once recently. It is an incredible place to meet people. But going back to Plug and Play 2022, we accelerated 2,400 startups. I think about 200 of them, 150 of them was here in Japan. And go ahead to the next slide. And this is our power. Like if you take Sumitomo, MUFG, Fujitsu, in Japan and in Silicon Valley, we have more than 70 of the conglomerates of Japan as part of our platform. In US, we have Walmart, Cargill, Pepsi, and so many of the corporations, banks, and insurance companies like Daiichi Life, Tokyo Marine, they are all going through a digital transformation, and we feel they cannot keep up with their own R&D and engineering team. And we feel connecting them to startups makes their journey faster, better, cheaper. Go ahead to the next one. So we have 50 locations. I could be sitting in Silicon Valley in Sunnyvale. I say I'm in a good neighborhood because I'm right 3 miles from Apple and 3 miles from Google. And I could do number of investments, but I really would love to take this culture of open innovation, building ecosystem all over the world, and to the extent that I had forgotten about America. So now I have 50 locations around the world and only 3, 4 locations in US. And 2023, we are planning to open 10 locations in US and take this innovation culture, this startup ecosystem to different parts of the world. I think that's my last slide, but let's go to the next one.
I think so. Yes, you're right.
Hallelujah. I had good person teach me what to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Saeed. So now that we know what Viva Tech and Plug and Play do, I would like to proceed to the panel discussion. We have some topics with us today. We can talk about these or go beyond these. But since both of you have a lot of experience and expertise in growing startup ecosystems in your countries and around the globe, I would like to start with the first question, which is, from your perspective, what are some trends in the startup ecosystem and open innovation that have happened in the past few years? Who would like
Maybe
to
you
go?
can go first.
Okay, yes, thank you. I think that we can use Vivatech as a way to understand what is happening because we have almost 2,000 startups every year and 200 key companies like Audi, L'Oréal, LVMH, etc. I think that the most important thing today is to consider that open innovation is the new standard. Maybe 6 or 7 years ago, some companies were still wondering, is it useful? Is it interesting? Now everybody knows that if you don't have an open innovation program, you will be lost in the next year because you will miss the next big jump and the next disruption. Usually, the big companies, they used to rely on their own R&D, internal R&D, and now it's open. And so the question is not, will we or won't we work with open innovation? It's more, how do we work with open innovation? And I think it's interesting to see that before and after the pandemic, things have changed. Especially, I think that the ecosystem is more and more elaborated, more and more sophisticated in two ways. First, it's more and more global. And I think that actors like Plug and Play are exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, they are everywhere in the world because you don't know where innovation will come from. It can be from Japan, from the US, from Africa, from Europe. So you have to be everywhere. And at the same time, this ecosystem is at the same time very, very local. So it can look a little bit like how does it work together, but it's true that if you don't have a good understanding of what is happening with the startup ecosystem in Japan, in France, Italy, South Africa, etc., you don't understand how it works, and you will miss the way to plug with them and to have the good value for money. So I think that more global, more local, and open innovation as an evidence for everybody.
So if I can, I believe open innovation and the startup world will change every industry. And we are in Japan, a home of Toyota and Nissan and Mitsubishi, some of the best car companies in the world. But I like to use an example of what we launched in Stuttgart with Mercedes. About 6 years ago, we had an executive team from Mercedes come. It was all their C-suite and their board of directors. And after they spent 3-4 hours with us in our headquarters, they asked us, can you please open a plug and play open innovation platform in Stuttgart? Because Ola, who is the new CEO, mentioned to me the speed of change for electrification, autonomous, connected car, it's so fast that even Mercedes, which they consider themselves an engineering company, could not keep up. 6 years later, in this open innovation platform in Stuttgart, we have Mercedes, Porsche, Volkswagen, Audi, ZF, Bosch, Deutsche Telekom, about 33 corporations on the platform, working with about 80 startups that we bring to Stuttgart every year. And all of these corporations have agreed that if they choose a startup and we bring them to Stuttgart from US, Canada, and in fact we had 4 from Japan, more than 30 from Israel. They are willing to do a pilot and roll out the technology if it makes sense. So if I could talk about new trends, it's applying AI to solve different industries' problem. Specifically in Mercedes, the speed of electrification, autonomous, carbon reduction, it is going so fast and the consumer expects it. So we feel the only way you could keep up with this transformation is through innovation, through startups. And as you said, François, they need to complement their own engineering team and R&D team with a lens from entrepreneurs so they can change faster, cheaper, better. But I said that already. Faster, cheaper, better.
Thank you, Saeed. I do want to get back to your point about how I think companies have traditionally had R&D
Yeah.
internally, but then more and more companies are opening up that function and embracing open innovation with startups. I want to be mindful of the fact that I think most of the audience sitting here is from Japan, and I myself do think that sometimes large Japanese corporations have a difficult time embracing the concept of not having all of the R&D internally and embracing open innovation. In your observations, what triggers that change? How can corporations change that mindset and embrace open innovation?
I think that they are just looking at what is happening. And they have seen major companies like Kodak, for instance, who were only relied on their own R&D. And so people came with digital picture and etc. And they were completely destroyed. And so I think that this is the fear of disruption that makes them understand that if you are not open to what is happening everywhere else, you will lose. And I think that it's a question of culture. How do you manage with your internal culture to be open up enough to discuss with the culture of a startup? Because very often the barrier, the obstacle between a big company and a startup, it's not the money, it's not the talent, it's not the way of working, it's how to understand each other. Because when you work in a startup, you're very agile, you don't care about the rules, everything is possible. Someone is working on the development and then can be sales manager, etc. And on the other side, you have the companies with very rigorous rules internal. And it's important because you cannot be a big company if everything goes everywhere at the same time. And you have to make these people talk together. And I think that once you manage to do that, and I think that we hope that VivaTech is a platform to people to help them to understand each other. And I think that Plug and Play, you are this kind of translator between the different culture. If you manage to do that, it works. Otherwise, you invest in startups, you kill the startups, and you have just spent money for the founder to be rich enough to spend their life on an island. And it's awful. So the question is, the culture, how you open up your culture and you make these people work together with the startups.
So if I may add to this, sometimes actually if you take Nokia or AT&T in US, they even had internal technologies for smartphone or for mobile phone. Believe it or not, a company as big as AT&T sold their, their mobile portfolio before they implemented. The most important thing is the culture of the entrepreneur willing to try new ideas. And some of the ideas that we don't know, I mean, like I believe iPhone and Android change all our lives. I don't know how have I survived without the smartphone before. But even though AT&T and I'm sure Deutsche Telekom and Docomo here knew about mobile phone, it took a company like Apple that came out of the blue. It was not Nokia. It took company like Android, which is Google, to implement the operating system, the apps, and how we are using it for all aspects of our life. So the idea of open innovation and building a startup ecosystem is to create an atmosphere that people can try new ideas. I must say, in Plug and Play headquarter in Sunnyvale, we have over 30 Japanese companies having their scout and having their CVC, corporate venture arm, in Plug and Play. Because I believe they have realized, even though I have total respect for these conglomerates like Sumitomo and Nissan, Toyota, etc., the speed of change is so fast that they need to be connected to Silicon Valley. They need to be connected to Stuttgart, Munich, different parts of the world, so they don't become like Kodak or Nokia. You know, it is really funny. If you take the market cap of the most valued company in the world, 8 out of 10 is like Apple, Google, Facebook, or Meta right now. And if you took that 10 years ago, it was only banks and oil companies. But the reality is, every company has to become a technology company. Every company has to use technology to move faster, or they will disappear. And again, I am a big fan of startups. Some people say I'm startup junkie. And I have invested in more than 1,500 startups. And I pretty much put my money where my mouth is. And I believe they will change the world to better.
I think
And along the way, they make me money too.
and I think the interesting thing is also to consider that big companies, like the one you talked about, they are very good at improving. So you give them something that works, and they are very good to improve, to find new services around, etc., to make it even better and better. But the question is of innovation is a little bit different, and this is why they need the startups, because with innovation comes the possibility of failure. And failure is exactly the thing that big companies are the most reluctant to. So I think it's a good way also to consider there is a kind of partition of the responsibilities. Improvement is on the side of the companies, and innovation on the side of startups. And at the end of the day, we can consider it works quite well.
So if I can add, you're absolutely right. Improvement and scaling is nobody can do it better than conglomerate Japanese companies, but they have to incorporate the new ideas or new products to be able to scale it and improve it.
Thank you. For all of that, I think the existence of entrepreneurs that are willing to take the risk and try out new things is probably very important. I think within Japan, the number of startups has been on the rise, and I think this is one of the first events held by the Tokyo government to really grow the startup ecosystem. So I think the scene is starting to grow and happen here as well. But you have obviously witnessed something similar in Silicon Valley and in Europe over different phases of the growth of this ecosystem. What do you, from your knowledge of the current Japanese ecosystem, what do you think is needed to, I guess, advance this further?
So may I ask you to go first, because I have a very concise answer, but please.
No, thank you. I think that the question is the question of the risk. And we have to understand how a culture can be reluctant to risk, And I think that nobody loves risk. I mean, when you wake up in the morning, you don't say, "Oh, it's great. I will take a lot of risk. Maybe I will fail. Happy." No, it doesn't work like this. So you have to understand the relationship with the risk. I'm not very familiar with Japanese culture, but I think maybe it's not a very
No.
no, I
No,
don't.
it's
I
not.
don't think so. But it's not an issue. I think that we were talking about open innovation, and open innovation. It's not just a startup. It's also the ecosystem around them that makes them more reliable, more confident in themselves. And for instance, in Europe, we don't like risk either, but states, regions, city, just like Tokyo, they have implemented a lot of initiatives that helps the entrepreneurs to reduce the risk for themselves. And this is a win-win approach, and I think this is what is very important. It's to work on the culture for people to be happy to take risk, but at the same time, it's very important to give them support with with things. For instance, in France, we have these things we were talking about. If you are a founder, you pay less taxes, for instance. So,
Oh, really?
yes, so it's a way for the French state to tell people, okay, you will take risks, but we know that it's going to be difficult for you. So, okay, we play the game, but we are a team. So I think this is the kind of thing that we should try also to implement maybe here in Japan.
If you're an entrepreneur, you pay less taxes?
If you, at the beginning, in fact, to be honest. But it's very important for especially young entrepreneurs.
I hope there's someone from the Tokyo government sitting here listening to this.
Also, I think in France it's very important that instead of paying taxes, you can invest in a startup. And I used to say Berlin and London was the hotbed of startups in Europe. But I believe during the last year, France has taken over. And that shows that you can change. Last night, I met your lady governor of Tokyo and also the vice governor that he was running Yahoo Tokyo for 15 years. And as this event shows, it's the first big event supported by Tokyo City and Tokyo State. And I believe Japan is right now ready for a change. The corporations are, I have more CVC Japanese partner than ever before. So there is always a time that things suddenly materializes. And I think time for Japanese entrepreneurs and the Japanese corporations is now. And I really I am been looking to invest in Japan for 5-6 years, and we are doubling the number of our investments each year. And I believe truly the quality of the entrepreneur has improved greatly in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. My next question is actually from my pure interest because I run a company that provides a platform for events and conferences, and I think a big part of what you both do is running events to connect players in the industry together. Can you give us some insight into how holding conferences or holding events is a key, I guess, part of all of this?
Maybe because he's big in event, I go first. I run over 500 events per year. We consider, when we do what we call a summit in our headquarters, it's over 3 days, it's 3,000 people. We do the similar thing in Stuttgart, it's about 2,000 people. But we have almost 2 events per day in different parts of the world. And I love Zoom, I love emails. But if you really want to build trust and build a relationship with the entrepreneur as an investor, you need to meet the team. You need to spend time with the team because you're going to be married for 7 to 10 years. And if you don't like even the personality of the entrepreneur, I would recommend you should not invest because you're going to be very frustrated. So I believe events like this, yesterday I walked around and I talked to at least 30 startups, and I really enjoyed three of them, and I'm going to follow up with due diligence and possibly invest in them. And but if this platform was not here, it would be very difficult on an email and a pitch deck to get excited about a startup. So I really feel may it be a small pitch event that where we feature 10 startups to 50 possible investor. It's really important. And then I turn it to you. I think mega events are fabulous.
I think the key interest of event is what is unexpected. Because yes, we can meet with Zoom, Teams, and everything, but everything has been prepared. The interesting thing that will happen today is the meeting that nobody would have expected. It's the discussion I will have with some of you after the session. It's even the discussion that we have together. And this thing, it's the most precious thing with an event. And I think the quality of an event is the possibility of mixing as many different kind of people as possible, coming from all over the world, and to create the possibility of unexpected meeting. So it's, of course, it's very difficult to manage and to achieve, but you can, when you can do that, you reach an amazing return of investment for everybody. This is really the key. What is unexpected?
And if I can also add, like Mitran goes to Viva Tech. Last night we were hosted by your lady governor. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, and vice governor. And I have been to Tokyo 10 times in the last 7 years, but I have not seen this enthusiasm from the city of Tokyo. So Shibuya, where we put our first office, I think it's Tokyo Land, was very excited to have us there. Now Google is there and many other technology startups. But I think as a whole state of Tokyo, I think it's the 11 million people. I have never seen this much excitement, and I really think it's time to take off. And again, if I was the governor, I would say I would support 1,000 startups per year, and we will find, you know, I always talk about unicorns. Plug and Play has 34 unicorns. I think Japan is around 10, if I'm
Yeah, I
not.
think it's less than 10 or about
Yeah,
10.
so I
yeah.
didn't want to say that. but, but nevertheless, if you give enough chances to the entrepreneurs, I would love to be part of the journey of 10 unicorns out of Japan. And you're going to help me find them.
Thank you, Saeed. I want to be mindful of time. We only actually have 10 minutes left, and I haven't really gone through the questions on the slide yet. I'm going to combine the last two questions and ask you to, which I think is on a lot of people's mind. Has the pandemic had an influence on the ecosystem? And what do you think is coming ahead in the next few years?
Yes, pandemic had a lot of effects on the ecosystem. I would say that at the same time, it has been, for the startup, a blessing and a curse. It has been a blessing because for 2 years, there has been a lot of money invested in startups because, as everywhere else, everything was blocked. It was the place where you could invest, and also because we have seen that the economy, the business, has shifted from in real life business to digital business. So it was great for the startup. They have all of them. They knew an amazing growth. They have been able to hire talent, and so it has been the blessing part of the pandemic. But now we are after the pandemic, and this is the curse. The curse is the fact that pandemic was just an abnormal moment in the ecosystem life, and now we are back to normal. But people are used to have a lot of investment. They are used to use a lot of money for things that maybe they shouldn't, and also they are used to have a lot of talent. And the lending is a little bit tough for a lot of people, and so it will change the landscape of the ecosystem. I think that in the coming months we will see some merger between startups. Maybe we will see, and it's already the case, we will see startups that will disappear, but maybe this is not the best startups. And maybe we are entering what we could call a Darwinism period for startup, where everything was possible, and now it's time just to focus on the best ideas, the best leaders, the best teams, to have only the best possibilities. But there is also something that is very interesting. I think on the other side also, for the VC, maybe it's going to be difficult as well. Maybe we will see less VCs, but with more focused approach on the fields of innovation that are the more interesting for people. And this is my last point. I think that maybe also we will see the rise of alternative models, because we are all looking at the US, at the Silicon Valley, and it's true that this is where open innovation has been invented. But now there are many other models. I think about India, I think about Europe, and maybe tomorrow in Japan. And it's a moment to try something else. Maybe it's time to do something else with involving the states, the universities, common people in something new that will be that could be more reliable. And I would say that it will also change the fields where startup will be good. For instance, you know that sustainability, green tech is something huge, and this is something that could be better and better. So I think that the face of the ecosystem will change, and also the areas where startup will be investing.
Thank you. So I guess a lot of people tend to be a little bit pessimistic about what happened in the last few years, but it's in a way normalizing a bit, right?
Yes, and I would say something, because people are saying, "Oh, it's going to be difficult. It's ice age for the startup, blah blah blah. It's so full." But if you look at the number, it's the same level of investment than in 2019. And maybe I don't have a good memory, but I think that people were not in the street saying, "It's so full, I've got a startup, I cannot find money." I think we are back to normal, and so everybody has to face the fact that it won't be like as it was during the pandemic, but it's not abnormal, it's normal.
Thank you. What do you think,
So
Saeed?
I think, first of all, I was shocked March 2020 when they told me I cannot go to my own office. I used to receive 2,000 visitors per month. So that was the mode of operation for me. That was the mode of, I used to meet every startup before I invested. But we had to change. So we learned to live by Zoom and try to get to know the people. But what I think has changed afterward is best of both worlds. It's both hybrid, you can extend your reach via Zoom, but also you could visit people. Like it is not back to normal. Now we are receiving about 1,000 visitors per month. And what happened is I had to come to Osaka, I had to come to Kyoto, I had to go closer to where I wanted to do business. But now, after, because there was no quarantine coming to Japan, or still there is a little quarantine going to China, I feel when this is all over, you can take advantage of this communication skills that we have learned, plus having the face to face meeting to build trust. And just to share what you say, one of my startup, I Ride, which is an autonomous electric truck out of Sweden, just raised $500 million in the last 2 weeks. So good startups get funded every day. It's not chaos like it was 18 months ago or 2 years ago. And I think the valuations are normal, and it's the best time to invest for the VCs and corporate partners. And again, the investing is not easy, but best companies were born, like Google were born at a time like this, because you have more time to develop your product. You actually can hire talent
Less competitors.
and execute. Yeah,
Yes.
I love competition. It's okay.
Thank you. I guess it kind of goes back to your point that you mentioned at the very beginning about how now the world has changed, but it's a mix, it's a hybrid. You can connect locally, but then also globally. On that note, has investment changed? Do you think there's more investment globally? So American VCs investing in non-American startups abroad, has that
Yeah.
changed?
So I can talk to you about plug and play. We used to invest over 80% number of investments in US, 20% abroad. And I don't know if it was for exactly what reason, but 2022, that thing shift. Actually, we had 45% of our investment in US and 55% abroad. It could be that because now we have been on the ground here 6 years, so we're going to do more than 20 investments here. But at least plug and play mindset, and we have 133 professional investors. We are going to do more investment abroad. We love to do more investments in Japan and then help them go global. And I believe I am not alone. I think a lot of investors think like me.
Yes, I 100% agree. I think that what we see is that the investors um, who don't have local offices, they are investing less abroad because they are a little bit blink, I would say. But those who have a real understanding of the local ecosystem, they invest more. And it's true because this is what we said at the very, very beginning. A good idea, it can come from anywhere in the world. So you have to be everywhere. But if you have just global, it doesn't work. You
Yeah.
really need to understand, to have a true understanding of what is happening. Otherwise, you will make a bad investment.
So if I may share something with the audience, 2006, when I opened Plug and Play, my passion was to go to 20 universities per year. MIT, Harvard, Berkeley, Stanford. And I acted like as a judge in business plan competition. And going from East Coast to West Coast to Waterloo and Toronto in Canada, it was like deja vu. A lot of the students had the same ideas, same timing. It almost like I said, my God, didn't I just hear that yesterday? But it is in execution that matters, is having funding that matters, and having mentors and people helping you to execute, which makes like Google what it is today.
Thank you. There's a lot more questions I want to ask you too, but I think we unfortunately are running out of time and need to wrap up. I would like to end the session with maybe one key takeaway message to the audience from both of you. If you may.
I say be open-minded and connect to the entrepreneurs, invest, and let's change the world. That was more than one sentence.
Thank you,
No, I
François.
just would like to say that I think that the world is really looking forward to having Japan opening and to show what it can do with startups, really.
Thank you. On that note, I would like to wrap up the session. Thank you so much, you two, for joining us, and thank you, everyone, for joining the session. Please give a round of applause to the two guests here today.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.